You have a secret room inside your mind. This is the Astral Temple, the hidden engine of mental magic. It is an inner sanctuary built from pure imagination and will, a private world so vivid it can reshape your outer reality. For centuries, mystics and magicians have used these mental constructs for spiritual growth, powerful ritual, and profound self-transformation. By the end of this journey, you will understand how to build your own. We will walk through ancient tombs and medieval castles of the soul, explore the laboratories of Renaissance wizards and the lodges of secret societies, and see how this timeless technique evolved into modern psychology and even popular culture. How did a simple daydream become a cornerstone of esoteric practice? What happens when you treat your imagination as the most real place in the world? What kind of sanctuary does your spirit need to build? This story begins not in a library of dusty grimoires, but in the dry heat of the Egyptian desert. Long before the term Astral Temple was ever spoken, the ancients understood a fundamental truth: the spirit needs a home. For the Egyptians, every person had a ka, a spiritual double, a vital essence that lived on after death. But this ka was not meant to wander as a ghost. It required a dwelling place. This is why they built the pyramids and the rock-cut tombs in the Valley of the Kings. These were not just graves. They were eternal houses, meticulously designed and stocked with everything the ka might need for an everlasting afterlife. Furniture, food, even tiny servant statues called shabdis were provided. Think about that. They were constructing a physical, tangible blueprint for a spiritual reality. In a very real sense, the tomb was an architect's model for the soul's private sanctuary. It was the first great attempt to build a permanent residence in the unseen world, a prototype of the temple you would one day build entirely within your own mind. Across the Mediterranean, a different culture arrived at a similar idea, but from the opposite direction. The Greeks had the concept of the Temenos. This was a sacred precinct, a piece of land marked off and dedicated to a god. A temple sat within it, but the entire enclosed area was considered holy ground, separate from the ordinary world. It was a bubble of divine order. Philosophers like Plato then turned this idea inward. His famous allegory of the cave asked us to question everything we perceive. The shadows on the wall, he suggested, are just poor copies of a more perfect, luminous reality of ideal forms. While not a manual for mental magic, Plato's cave forces a profound question. What if the truest reality isn't out there, but accessed somewhere within? The Greeks gave us the framework of a sacred, separate space and the philosophical suspicion that our inner world might hold deeper truths. But to find the most direct ancestors of the Astral Temple, we must listen to the drum. In indigenous cultures across every continent, from the Siberian tundra to the Amazon rainforest, shamans practiced journeying, using rhythm, chant, or sometimes sacred plants that would enter altered states of consciousness. Their goal was to travel. They would visualize descending through a hole into the lower world, climbing a tree or mountain to the upper world, or navigating the spirit-filled middle world. In these journeys, they did not wander aimlessly. They had destinations. They would meet with animal guides, consult with ancestor spirits, or retrieve healing energies from specific, vividly imagined landscapes. A shaman might have a recurring rendezvous at a particular spirit mountain or a healing spring known only to them. This was not mere fantasy. It was a navigated, purposeful expedition into a consistent inner geography that had real effects in the physical community. Here in the shaman's trance, we see the primal, living root of the practice, the conscious creation of an inner space to travel to, a space where real work gets done. So from Egypt, we inherit the idea of building a home for the spirit. From Greece, we receive the concept of a demarcated sacred space and a philosophy that points inward. And from shamanic traditions worldwide, we get the lived experience of journeying to and operating within a visualized, interactive landscape. These are the deep, ancient foundations. They are the earliest answers to a timeless human urge to construct a refuge and a workshop not of stone and wood, but of image, symbol, and pure will. The blueprint was drawn thousands of years ago. The next chapter in our story asks, who were the first people to try and build that temple consciously while still very much alive? The blueprint for the inner temple was now drawn, but it lacked a master architect. That role would be filled in the bustling, sun-drenched city of Alexandria. Here, at the crossroads of the ancient world, Egyptian mysticism, Greek philosophy, and Eastern thought collided and fused in a great alchemy of ideas. From this intellectual furnace emerged a body of teachings that would become the bedrock of all Western esoteric practice. Hermeticism, its core text, the Corpus Hermeticum, presented dialogues between a divine teacher, Hermes Trismegistus, and his eager student. Within these pages, we find the precise philosophical justification for building a temple in the mind. The most famous principle is, of course, as above, so below. This simple phrase holds a universe of meaning. It declares a fundamental correspondence between the vast, starry macrocosm of the heavens and the intimate microcosm of the human being. Your mind is not separate from the cosmos, it is a perfect, miniature reflection of it. Every planet, every force, every divine archetype out there has its counterpart within you. Therefore, if you wish to understand the universe, you must first understand your own inner landscape, and if you wish to influence the greater cosmic order, you begin by ordering your own inner world. This is the ultimate permission slip for mental magic. It states plainly that the work you do inside your own consciousness is real, consequential work on the fabric of reality itself. Another crucial Hermetic concept is the pleroma. This is the divine fullness, the ultimate source from which all creation emanates like light streaming from a single, blinding sun. The human soul, or nous, is a spark of that same divine light, but it has become encased in the material world, forgetful of its origin. The spiritual path, then, is a journey of remembrance and return. It is an ascent back through the inner realms toward that source. How does one make this ascent? Not by building physical towers, but by turning the gaze inward. The Hermetic texts describe contemplative practices, intense dialogues with one's own divine intellect, aimed at purifying the soul and awakening its latent powers. The mind becomes the primary tool, the only instrument fine enough to navigate these subtle, interior dimensions. You commune with the divine not primarily through external ritual, though that has its place, but through an inner alignment, a conscious retuning of your own microcosm to the harmonies of the macrocosm. Think of it this way: before Hermeticism, a sacred space was a location, a tomb, a temple precinct, a spirit mountain. After Hermeticism, the most important sacred space is a state of consciousness. The temple is no longer just a building you visit, it is a clarity you cultivate within. The rituals are no longer just actions you perform with your body, they are operations you conduct with your imagination and will. Alexandria provided the theoretical engine. It gave mystics and magicians for the next 2,000 years a profound reason to look within. It told them the universe was mirrored in their own souls, and that by mastering the reflection, they could learn to touch the original. This was the quiet, revolutionary idea that set the stage for everything to come. The architectural plans were complete. The philosophical foundation was poured. Now the question became a practical one. How do you actually build it? And who would be the first to write down the instructions? The desert of Egypt and the academies of Alexandria gave way to the cloistered silence of medieval monasteries. Here, far from the bustling world, a new kind of architect took up the blueprint for the inner temple. They were Christian mystics, and they built not with stone, but with prayer and profound introspection. Their goal was not just knowledge, but a direct, transformative encounter with the divine, and they discovered that such a meeting required a meticulously prepared inner chamber. Perhaps the most stunning architectural plan from this era came from a Spanish nun named Teresa of Avila. In her masterpiece, The Interior Castle, she described the human soul as a magnificent castle made of a single, clear crystal. At its center, in the innermost mansion, dwells God Himself. The soul's entire spiritual journey, according to Teresa, is a movement through 7 concentric mansions, each representing a deeper stage of purification, understanding, and love. The outer mansions are busy with distractions and worldly cares, but as one progresses inward through prayer and discipline, the rooms become more serene, more luminous. This was not a vague metaphor. For Teresa and her sisters, this was a practical, navigable map. Their contemplative practice was the act of leaving the noisy outer courtyards and patiently, persistently moving through the quiet halls toward that brilliant central chamber. This is the Astral Temple reimagined as a journey home, a step-by-step path to the sacred core of one's own being. Another profound practice flourished in the Eastern Orthodox tradition known as hesychasm. Its practitioners, often monks living in remote solitude, sought a state of inner stillness and perpetual prayer. Their central technique was the repetition of the Jesus prayer, a short, rhythmic plea for mercy. But this was not about reciting words with the lips. The true aim was to descend with the mind into the heart. They visualized their consciousness, their attention, sinking down from the chatter of the head into the quiet, sacred space of the spiritual heart. This was the creation of an internal altar. By uniting the mind and heart in continuous prayer, they were constructing a living temple within their own chest, a stable, luminous point from which to perceive divine light. They believed this practice could lead to the vision of the uncreated light of God, a direct illumination from within the sanctuary they had built. Meanwhile, in a German convent, the visionary Hildegard of Bingen was receiving elaborate, divinely inspired sights. She did not just describe these visions in text, she had them illustrated as stunning, complex mandalas. These were not random pictures, they were schematic diagrams of cosmic order and the soul's place within it. One of her most famous images, the universe as an egg, shows concentric spheres of fire, air, and water, with humanity standing at the center, connected by pathways of divine force to the outermost heavens. For Hildegard, these were not abstract art, they were maps, they were technical drawings of the spiritual architecture that interpenetrates our reality. To meditate upon such an image was to orient oneself within that grand structure, to find one's own inner castle within the cosmic order. In these medieval practices, we see the astral temple concept fully embraced within a devotional framework. The temple became a castle for the soul, a heart chamber for prayer, a cosmic map for orientation. The purpose was singular, divine union. The tools were prayer, visualization, and unwavering inner focus. They proved that the sanctuary of the mind could be a place of the most profound encounter, setting a standard of depth and devotion that all later mental magic would strive to match. Yet, as the Renaissance dawned, a new spirit of inquiry arose. What if this inner temple could be used not only for prayer, but for knowledge? What if its rooms could become laboratories? The cloistered silence of the monastery was shattered by the roar of rediscovery. The Renaissance did not just revive classical art and science, it unleashed a torrent of ancient esoteric texts back into the European mind. Suddenly, the wisdom of Hermes Trismegistus, long forgotten in the West, was being translated and debated in the vibrant courts of Italy. This was not a quiet, inward-looking mysticism anymore. This was magic as a dynamic, cosmic science, and the human imagination was its most powerful instrument. At the heart of this revolution was a radical idea that the mind could be architecturally engineered to become a conduit for the forces of the universe. The key figure in this daring synthesis was a defiant friar named Giordano Bruno. Bruno took an ancient Roman technique called the memory palace, a method for memorizing speeches by placing vivid images in the rooms of an imagined building, and he transformed it into a full-blown magical system. For Bruno, this was not just a mental filing cabinet. The architecture of your memory palace was a mirror of the cosmic architecture by populating its halls and chambers with potent astrological and mythological images. A lion for the sun, an owl for wisdom, a raging god for the planet Mars. You were not just storing information. You were constructing an inner model of the universe itself. Once built, this mental model became active. By ritually walking through these inner halls and contemplating the images, the magician's soul would align with the celestial realities those images represented. The line between memorization and invocation blurred into nothingness. Your memory palace became an astral temple, a working model of the cosmos where you could literally attract the influences of the stars and planets into your own consciousness. This practice rested on a foundational Renaissance belief, the anima mundi, or world soul. Think of it as a vast, living, intelligent energy field that permeates all of creation, connecting the stars in the heavens to the stones on the ground. For philosophers like Marsilio Ficino, the human soul was a focal point of this world soul, and our imagination was not just a private movie screen, it was the antenna, the receptive organ, tuned to specific frequencies within that cosmic field. A disciplined imagination, therefore, was a form of spiritual technology. Ficino, translating the works of Plato and Hermes, prescribed specific practices. To attract the beneficial intellectual energy of the sun, for example, one might surround oneself with golden objects or yellow silk, listen to certain harmonious music, and most importantly, vividly imagine the sun's light filling one's being. This was not passive daydreaming, it was an active, ritualized use of the imagination to draw down or capture celestial power. The mind, focused through image and desire, became a temple designed to receive a very specific kind of divine guest. This philosophy reached its most comprehensive form in the work of Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. His massive 3-volume work, 3 books of occult philosophy, was an encyclopedia of this new magical science. Agrippa detailed how everything in the universe was connected through layers of correspondence, colors, herbs, planets, numbers, angelic names. The magician's job was to learn this symbolic language and then use the imagination to speak it. By concentrating on a symbol, say, the image of the planet Jupiter along with its associated color blue, its metal tin, and its number 4, the magician's soul would resonate with jovial power. This resonance could then be directed outward to bring about wisdom, prosperity, or protection. The crucial point is where this resonance began. It started in the mind's eye. The magician first built the perfect symbolic form within the sanctum of his imagination. That inner construction created the alignment, the outer ritual merely confirmed and grounded it. So the Renaissance magicians saw the astral temple not just as a sanctuary for prayer, but as a dynamic workshop, a theater of memory, and a finely tuned astronomical instrument. They built mental structures to store knowledge, to align with planets, and to attract divine essences. The imagination was no longer a shadow of reality, it was the loom on which reality could be rewoven. This was a breathtaking elevation of human potential, but it carried a terrifying responsibility. If the mind was such a powerful transmitter, what happened when the signal it sent out was one of fear or obsession or darkest desire? The temple could become a prison, its walls echoing with the magician's own unmastered self. But such power did not stay confined to the private studies of lone philosophers. The 17th century saw the idea of the inner temple go underground, becoming the central secret of a mysterious brotherhood that claimed to have no physical address at all. In the year 1614, a strange document began circulating through the courts and universities of Europe. It was called the Fama Fraternitatis, the Declaration of the Rosicrucian Fraternity. It told the story of a German pilgrim named Christian Rosenkreuz who traveled to the East, acquired profound wisdom, and founded a secret society dedicated to the spiritual and intellectual reformation of the world. The most captivating detail was that this society was invisible. You could not apply to join. You could only be invited, and the invitation came not by letter, but by an inner recognition, a readiness of the soul. Their headquarters was described as the House of the Holy Spirit, a sanctuary that was not built of stone, but existed on a spiritual plane, accessible only to those who had undergone the necessary inner purification. This was the ultimate evolution of the Astral Temple concept, an entire college, a complete academy of hidden knowledge, existing as a shared inner reality for a dispersed fellowship of adepts. You did not travel to them, you learned to raise your consciousness to meet them in that unseen lodge. The symbol of this order was the rosy cross, a rose blooming at the center of a cross. This was far more than an emblem. For a seeker, it became a living portal. Meditating upon this symbol was the primary method of connection. One would visualize the cross, perhaps feeling its arms as the intersection of spirit and matter, or the four elements. Then, upon that stable structure, one would imagine a perfect, fragrant rose unfolding at its very center. This rose represented the blossoming of the soul, the divine heart, the achieved goal of the great work. By holding this image steadily in the mind's eye, the meditator was not just thinking about the Rosicrucians, they were actively tuning their consciousness to the specific frequency of the house of the Holy Spirit. The symbol itself was the gateway, and focused imagination was the key that turned in the lock. This work was framed as spiritual alchemy. If the Renaissance magician used the inner temple as an astronomical instrument, the Rosicrucian used it as a laboratory. The great work of the alchemists, spoken of in coded texts about turning lead into gold, was always an inner process. The base lead was the unrefined, chaotic human self, ruled by passions and ignorance. The philosopher's gold was the enlightened, immortal spirit. The laboratory where this transformation took place was the purified body, mind, and soul of the adept. Their astral temple became the retort and the furnace. Within its sacred space, the meditations and disciplines were the fires that burned away impurities. The symbolic visions were the chemical marriages that united opposites within the psyche. Every piece of allegorical equipment in an alchemical text, the alembic, the pelican, the king and queen in their bath, could be understood as a feature of this inner laboratory, representing states of consciousness and spiritual processes. The goal was to produce the philosopher's stone, not a physical rock, but a permanent, crystallized state of perfected awareness, the golden consciousness that could then transform everything it touched. The Rosicrucian manifestos ignited a firestorm of speculation. Were they real? Were they a hoax, a political allegory? For our story, their reality is almost irrelevant. What matters is the powerful idea they implanted in the Western esoteric tradition, that the ultimate fraternity of wisdom is an invisible one, convened not in a hidden valley, but in a shared dimension of the mind. It suggested that the deepest truths are not found in books alone, but in the concerted, directed imagination of prepared individuals. Your personal astral temple, therefore, was no longer just a private chapel or workshop. It was potentially an antechamber to a greater, collective sanctum. It asked a daring question of every solitary seeker. If you build your inner sanctuary with enough skill and purity, might you find the door within it already open, and other builders waiting to greet you on the other side? This vision of a shared inner world would echo powerfully into the next great esoteric movement, one that would create literal temples here on earth as training grounds for the astral ones within. The invisible college of the Rosicrucians pointed toward a shared inner sanctum, but how does one actually train to build it? Enter the stonemasons. In the early 18th century, the fraternal order of Freemasonry emerged from the guilds of working builders, transforming the literal tools of architecture into a profound system of symbolic self-construction. Their meeting place, called the Lodge, is the most direct and elaborate blueprint for an astral temple ever created in the outer world. It is a physical classroom designed to teach you how to build a spiritual one. At the heart of Masonic symbolism stands King Solomon's Temple, not as a historical building to be admired, but as an eternal archetype of perfect order and divine wisdom. Every Masonic lodge is a representation of that lost temple, but here is the crucial twist. The temple they are truly building is not made of stone. It is the temple of their own character, erected within the sanctuary of their consciousness. The ritual work performed in the physical lodge is a rehearsal, a detailed instruction manual for the real work, which happens inside. Step into a Masonic lodge. The first thing you might notice underfoot is the checkered floor, a pavement of alternating black and white squares. This is the symbol of the dualistic nature of our existence, light and dark, joy and sorrow, good and evil. It represents the mundane world, the field upon which every human life plays out, but you do not stand passively upon it. In ritual, the Mason learns to move across this field with balance and purpose. In your personal astral temple, this becomes the foundation of your inner world. It is the acknowledgement that your spiritual work must be grounded in the reality of life's contrasts. Your temple is not built in a fantasy of perpetual light, but upon the conscious acceptance and integration of duality itself. Rising from this foundation are the two great pillars, usually named bows and jachin. One symbolizes strength, the other establishment. In the biblical story, they stood at the entrance to Solomon's temple. In the lodge, and in your mind, they represent the qualities you must cultivate to support your inner sanctum. Strength of will, stability of purpose, the establishment of truth within yourself, they are the gatekeepers. To enter your own temple, you must first build these pillars within your character. They are not decorative, they are structural. Your ability to hold a clear, stable visualization, your commitment to your spiritual practice. These are the bows and jachin of your psyche. Look up, and at the center of the ceiling, you will find the blazing star. This is not a distant, cold point of light. It is a radiant, central sun, often with the letter G at its heart, signifying both geometry, the sacred science of creation, and the great architect of the universe. This is the divine light, the source of all illumination. In the astral temple you build, this star is the crowning glory. It is the point of connection to something greater than yourself, the source of inspiration that fills the entire inner space with meaning. Your meditations might aim to bring this star to life above your inner sanctuary, feeling its light as a palpable force of clarity and guidance. Every Masonic ritual is an exercise in mental architecture. The candidate is guided through symbolic journeys, presented with tools like the compass and square, and confronted with allegorical dramas. This is not mere theater. It is a highly sophisticated method of imprinting symbols directly onto the subconscious mind through experience and emotion. The ritual is designed to be memorable, vivid, and felt. The symbols are not explained in a lecture, they are encountered as events. This process, repeated over years, slowly and deliberately constructs an inner edifice. The Mason is literally building a symbolic structure in his mind, piece by piece, degree by degree. So, what does this mean for you, even if you are not a Freemason? It demonstrates a master key to mental magic, the power of consistent, ritualized symbolism to shape the inner world. You can adopt this principle. You do not need a physical lodge to begin. You can choose your own central symbol, your own blazing star. You can define the pillars of strength and establishment you need to cultivate. You can acknowledge the checkered floor of your own life's experiences as your foundation. Then, through regular meditation, you visit this space. You visualize walking across that floor, passing between those pillars, and standing under that light. You perform your own inner rituals of contemplation. With each visit, the temple becomes more real, more detailed, more charged with meaning. Freemasonry shows us that the astral temple is not a vague daydream, but a disciplined architecture of the self. The tools are symbolic, but the work is concrete. The walls you raise are those of perception, and the cornerstone is your own focused intent. This elegant system of symbolic building, however, would soon meet a formidable new science that claimed the mind worked in a very different way. The elegant geometry of the Masonic Lodge met the electric charge of the Victorian occult revival. In the smoky drawing rooms of late 19th century London, a secret order emerged that would become the single most influential force in modern Western magic, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This was not a loose fellowship of mystics. It was a rigorous, hierarchical school, and its primary curriculum was the conscious, systematic construction and exploration of the Astral Temple. They provided the first complete step-by-step owner's manual for the inner worlds. For the Golden Dawn, the mind was not just an architect, it needed a vehicle to navigate the realms it built. This vehicle was called the Body of Light. Think of it as your conscious awareness poured into a subtle, mobile form, a second body crafted from imagination and will. It is the you that travels within the temple, that touches the symbols and converses with the visions. Before you could send this body of light on any journey, however, you had to create a perfectly clean launch pad. This is where their most famous practice comes in, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. To an outsider, it might look like strange gestures and muttered words. But its purpose is profoundly practical psychic hygiene. The ritual uses the pentagram, a symbol of the human microcosm, and divine names to clear the space around you, and more importantly, the space within you of distracting or chaotic influences. It draws a circle of purified energy. Performing it was like sweeping the workshop floor, turning your ordinary room, and by extension your own aura, into a consecrated temple ready for sacred work. With the space cleansed, the next step was to build the power source. You cannot light up a vast cathedral with a single candle. The Golden Dawn's middle pillar exercise solves this. It teaches you to construct an internal circuit of energy, aligning 5 centers down the midline of your body from above the head to the feet. You visualize spheres of light at each point, vibrating specific divine names, connecting them with a shaft of brilliant light. This is not vague visualization, it is a precise engineering project for your subtle body. The result is a stabilized, potentized personal energy field. Think of the lesser banishing ritual as drawing the sacred circle on the ground. The middle pillar is the act of raising your own central pillar of light within that circle. Only with this foundation, a purified space, and an energized, balanced self, could the real architectural magic begin. Students of the Golden Dawn were then taught to build specific inner sanctuaries called temples of the grades. These corresponded directly to the 10 spheres, or sephiroth, on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, a map of divine emanation from the infinite down to the material world. Each temple was a complete, immersive environment. To construct the Temple of Yesod, the sphere of the moon, and the astral plane itself, you would not just imagine a room. You would bathe it in specific violet and indigo hues. You would place precise symbols on the walls, a crescent moon, perhaps a magical 9-fold diagram. You would assume the god form, the imagined shape and presence of a lunar deity, feeling your body of light merge with that archetypal power. Then, within that fully realized space, you would perform rituals, meditate on mysteries, or seek initiations from inner plane teachers. The temple was both a classroom and a testing ground. The colors, symbols, and god forms were not arbitrary decoration. They were tuned frequencies, a complex language of consciousness designed to trigger specific states of understanding and power within the adept's psyche. By passing through these graded temples in sequence, the magician was climbing the tree of life within their own soul, restructuring their inner world to reflect the divine architecture. The Golden Dawn took the Astral Temple from a philosophical concept or a devotional ideal and turned it into a repeatable, technical discipline. They provided the tools, the banishing ritual, the energy exercise, the symbolic alphabets. They provided the blueprints, the temples keyed to the Tree of Life, and they provided the vehicle, the body of light. This was mental magic codified, a synthesis of everything that came before, Egyptian, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, alchemical, into a workable system. It democratized inner exploration, suggesting that with enough training and dedication, anyone could learn to build these palaces of the mind and walk their halls. But what happens when this meticulous, symbolic system encounters the raw, uncharted depths of the human psyche itself? A new science was rising that would offer a very different map and a startling new purpose for the temple within. The Golden Dawn's method begins not with grandeur, but with geometric simplicity. Your first task is to establish the fundamental shape of your sanctuary within the dark void of your closed eyes. You might choose a Greek cross, its 4 equal arms extending into the blackness, defining your sacred directions, or perhaps a perfect cube, a symbol of stability and the material world, now rendered in pure mental substance. This form is your foundation stone, the first permanent line you draw in the sands of your imagination. Hold that shape, clear and unwavering, until it feels more real than the room around you. This is the act of claiming a territory in consciousness, saying here, in this specific form, my temple will stand. Once the architecture is stable, you furnish it. You populate this empty space with objects of power and meaning. In the center, you visualize an altar. This is not merely a table, it is the focal point of your will, the place where the inner and outer worlds meet. Upon it, you might place a diagram of the tree of life, that map of cosmic and personal evolution. Then you establish the guardians of the space. Two pillars, perhaps one black and one white, are erected, framing the entrance or flanking the altar. They represent the eternal pairs of opposites you learn to navigate on the Masonic checkered floor. Now you bring in the elemental weapons, the classic tools of the magus. You see your wand, perhaps of almond wood, carved with symbols of fire and will. You place your cup, a chalice of silver or glass, holding the waters of emotion and intuition. You set down your sword, its blade sharp with intellectual discrimination, and your pentacle, a disc of wax or earth inscribed with a pentagram representing the physical realm. These are not decorations, they are extensions of your own faculties, given form so you can interact with them. You might hang lamps from the ceiling or set them in niches, filling the temple with a warm, golden light that has no visible source. The true magic, however, lies not in the sight alone, but in the full immersion of the senses. The Golden Dawn insisted you must not just see your temple, you must live within it. Feel the cool, smooth marble of the floor beneath your bare feet. Run your mental fingers along the rough-hewn stone of a pillar. Breathe in and smell the distinct fragrance of sandalwood or frankincense you have assigned to this space. Hear the distant, clear tone of a bell you ring to begin your work, or the sound of a specific mantra echoing softly against the walls. Taste the clean, metallic hint of the air after ritual banishing. By engaging every sense, you cross a critical threshold. The temple shifts from a picture you are looking at to a world you are standing inside of. This multisensory vividness is the glue that binds the astral construct, making it persistent and responsive. It becomes a place you can return to, a room that waits for you, more real with every visit. This meticulous, sensory-rich construction was the classical method, a precise technology of the spirit. Yet, even as these techniques were being perfected, a man in a consulting room in Vienna was mapping the mind in a way that would challenge every assumption about where such temples are really built. The walls of your temple are not a prison, but a membrane. They define a sacred space so that you may safely step beyond them or invite the beyond to step in. Once the architecture is stable and the senses engaged, the real work begins. This inner sanctum becomes a dynamic workshop, a control room for exploring realities that lie just outside the reach of ordinary sight. Its first great function is as a scrying chamber. In the outer world, a magician might gaze into a black mirror or a crystal ball, but the true screen is the mind itself. Inside your temple, you create that screen. You might visualize a dark, obsidian mirror hanging on the wall, or a sphere of clear quartz hovering above your altar. The critical difference is your environment. The temple itself, already charged with your intent and purified through ritual, acts as a powerful filter. It screens out the psychic static, the random mental chatter, and emotional noise that can cloud a vision. When you gaze into your inner mirror from this consecrated space, you are not staring into a void, but into a prepared channel. The images that arise are more likely to be coherent messages, symbolic insights, or reflections of deeper truths, because they are passing through the clarifying lens of your own sacred space. It is the difference between trying to see the stars from a brightly lit city street and viewing them through the polished lens of a telescope on a remote, silent mountain. Your temple is that mountain. With the same stability, your temple can become a launch pad. A firmly built inner sanctuary provides a fixed point of return, a home base coordinates you can always recall. This allows for the daring work of astral travel or journeying. The process often begins at the temple's threshold. You stand before a door that was not there a moment before, or you look out through a window that now shows not darkness, but a swirling mist or a starry path. With your body of light, you step through. You might intend to visit a historical site to sense its atmosphere, explore a symbolic landscape like a forest of wisdom or a river of time, or even attempt to reach the halls of those invisible colleges like the Rosicrucian House of the Holy Spirit. The key is that you always depart from and return to your temple. This ritual of departure and return does two things. It provides a psychological anchor, preventing the feeling of being lost or adrift in the vastness of inner space. And more importantly, it allows you to bring back whatever you find. You re-enter your temple with the energies or knowledge gathered, and you can process them there, perhaps laying a symbolic object from your journey on the altar for further contemplation. The temple is the stable ship from which you launch your exploratory dinghies. The most profound use, however, may be turning the temple into a reception hall for the numinous. This is the practice of invocation. Unlike evocation, which calls a force to appear outside a circle, invocation is an invitation for a quality, an archetype, or a divine force to enter and temporarily inhabit your own space, and by extension, your awareness. In your temple, you perform a ritual designed to invite a specific presence. This could be an angelic intelligence from the Kabbalistic tree, a god form like the Egyptian Thoth for wisdom, or the Greek Artemis for focused intuition, or even an archetype like the healer or the wise old one. You might chant a name, visualize specific symbols associated with them, and feel the atmosphere of your temple shift. The light might change to a particular color, a new scent might fill the air. The goal is not to lose yourself, but to achieve a conscious alignment. You dialogue with this presence, ask for guidance, or simply sit in its energy to understand its nature. You are not possessed, you are in conversation. The temple acts as a safe and magnified container for this encounter. Its walls hold the powerful energy, and its familiar, personal nature ensures the experience remains integrated into your own spiritual framework. You might leave the ritual feeling that you have absorbed a quality of that force, carrying a spark of that celestial artisan or planetary intelligence back into your daily life. So the Astral Temple is far more than a pretty daydream for relaxation. It is a scrying glass for clearer vision, a dock for journeys into the unknown, and a consecrated meeting room for dialogues with the depths of existence. It transforms the solitary mind from a passive observer into an active participant in a living, symbolic universe. But this very power to shape inner reality would soon face its greatest skeptic, a new science that sought to explain all such experiences not as journeys to other planes, but as voyages into the basement of the self. The meticulous temples of the Golden Dawn were built upon a map of universal symbols, a collective architecture for the soul. But what if the truest temple cannot be found on any shared map? What if its blueprint is written in the secret language of your own unique destiny? This is the radical, tumultuous question posed by Aleister Crowley and the philosophy of Thelema. Crowley, a former Golden Dawn adept, took the tools of mental magic and turned them toward a singular, explosive purpose, not to explore a pre-drawn tree of life, but to discover and then utterly embody one's true will. For Crowley, your true will is not a mere desire or a career choice. It is the cosmic function you were born to fulfill, your essential orbit in the universe. Aligning with it is the sole meaning of life, and the ultimate key to unlocking this knowledge is a mystical encounter so profound it reshapes everything, the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. Your holy guardian angel is not a winged being from a religious painting. Think of it as your highest, most complete self, your divine counterpart, the silent partner in your spiritual destiny that has been waiting since your birth for you to pick up the telephone. Achieving this knowledge and conversation is the great work of Thelemic magic. And where does this momentous meeting occur? Not on a mountaintop, but in the sanctum you have built within. The Astral Temple becomes the sacred rendezvous point, the only room private and potent enough to host this supreme revelation. Crowley saw the inner temple not as a static chapel, but as a dynamic throne room from which to command the forces of your own being. His methods were intense, designed to break the magician's attachment to ordinary identity. He used rituals like the Bornless ritual, an ancient invocation meant to strip away the ego, the Bornless one referring to the eternal, core self beyond name and form. By repeatedly performing such operations within his consecrated inner space, Crowley sought to tear down the walls of his petty personality to make direct contact with that angelic intelligence. The temple's stability allowed for this controlled demolition. It provided a safe container for what could be a shattering experience. This focus on the inner meeting was crystallized by the dramatic failure of his most famous outer experiment, the Abbey of Thelema. In 1920, Crowley rented a small house in Cefalù, Sicily, aiming to create a physical colony where aspirants could live according to the law of Thelema. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. The walls were painted with murals of symbolic and often shocking imagery, a literal attempt to manifest an astral community of will on the material plane. It was a temple made of plaster and paint, and it failed utterly, collapsing in scandal, expulsion, and tragedy within a few short years. This disaster taught Crowley and the esoteric world a brutal but invaluable lesson. You cannot force a shared outer temple to thrive if the individuals within have not first built their own inner fortresses of will. Community cannot precede authentic self-discovery. The Abbey's crumbling walls prove that the only Abbey that matters is the one you construct in the solitude of your own disciplined consciousness. The failure in Sicily screamed the principle: the kingdom is within. So, in the Thelemic practice, your astral temple is the construction site for your sovereignty. Every meditation, every ritual performed there is an act of aligning your will with that deeper, angelic current. You don't decorate it with universal symbols alone. You fill it with the images, tools, and words that resonate uniquely with your unfolding purpose. The ultimate goal is that within this temple, the voice of the angel becomes clear, directing the architecture of your life from the inside out. The will, or the lemma, is both the architect and the blueprint. Crowley shifted the goal from exploring a pre-existing spiritual universe to using that universe's forces to manifest the one thing that is authentically and irrevocably you. After such a focus on the individual's explosive encounter with destiny, however, the 20th century produced a system that viewed the inner temple not as a throne room, but as a clinic. Crowley's quest for the true will was a solitary, often brutal, ascent into the heights of the self. But what happens when you turn from that summit and look out across the psychic landscape? You might see not just beauty, but danger. The early 20th century was not only a time of occult exploration, but also of global psychic trauma, 2 world wars, a shattered collective psyche, and a growing awareness that the unseen world could be as perilous as it was profound. Into this atmosphere stepped a woman who would redefine the astral temple as something far more urgent, a fortress. Her name was Violet Firth, but the world knows her as Dion Fortune, and she was perhaps the first great psychologist of the esoteric. A member of the Golden Dawn and founder of her own society, the Fraternity of the Inner Light, Fortune approached magic not as a means to power, but as a science of the soul with a pressing emphasis on safety. Her most famous book is not a grimoire of high magic, but a manual for survival, psychic self-defense. For Fortune, the inner worlds were not just symbolic maps or angelic meeting halls. They were a living, energetic ecosystem teeming with influences both beneficial and harmful. She spoke of psychic vampirism, where one person unconsciously drains another's vitality. She wrote of thought forms, entities created by human emotion that could linger and influence. She described chaotic astral currents, the psychic fallout from mass human suffering and conflict. To venture into this terrain without protection, she argued, was as foolish as walking into a blizzard without a coat. The astral temple in her system was that coat, but she gave it a new, more practical name, the circle of protection, or the astral shell. This was not a complex temple with pillars and altars, though one could build that inside it. This was the outer wall, the first and most essential line of defense. Her method was beautifully simple and accessible. She taught her students to visualize a sphere of light completely surrounding them. The color was key. A brilliant, electric blue was often recommended for its active, repelling quality, like a constant, gentle shock to anything unwelcome. A pure, radiant white was for purification and divine connection. One would imagine this sphere not as a vague glow, but as a tangible, resilient shell with a definite surface. You would feel it around you, a foot or so from your body, humming with protective energy. In more advanced work, you might build it up in layers, a sphere of blue, then one of gold, then one of white, each with a specific defensive function. This circle of protection was, in essence, a minimalist, mobile astral temple. Its primary purpose was not exploration or invocation, but sanctuary. It was spiritual hygiene made visible. Before any meditation, any ritual, any foray into psychic work, you would construct this shell. It acted as a filter. It would allow in the energies you consciously invited: love, healing, guidance, while deflecting the random, draining, or hostile psychic muck that floats in the collective unconscious, especially in times of stress or in crowded places. Think of it like this: your mind is a radio capable of tuning into many frequencies. Without this protective shell, you are a receiver with its antenna wide open, picking up every signal on the band, the beautiful music, the clear news broadcast, but also the static, the hateful propaganda, and the emotional distress calls from nearby transmitters. Fortune's technique is the act of building a tuned circuit. You design your receiver to only clearly pick up the stations you choose while grounding out the interference. The temple as fortress also had an inward-facing purpose. In times of personal turmoil, when your own emotions were chaotic, anger, fear, grief, you could retreat within this circle. There, you could process those feelings without their energy spraying out uncontrollably into your environment and affecting others, or attracting reinforcing influences from the astral plane. It created a clean room within your own aura where healing could occur. Dion Fortune democratized a crucial aspect of mental magic that earlier systems often assumed or glossed over. She stated plainly that not everything in the unseen is friendly, and that a responsible spiritual practice requires taking responsibility for your own psychic space. Her work answered a silent question many modern seekers have. In a world that feels increasingly overwhelming, how do I stay safe in my own mind? Her answer was to build a wall of light, not to hide from the world, but to engage with it from a place of strength and clarity. The fortress is not the end of the journey, it is the secure base camp from which all other journeys must begin. And as the century wore on, this idea of an inner safe space would find a surprising new ally not in a magician's lodge, but in the sterile, bright offices of clinical psychology. The Fortress of Light built by Dion Fortune was a sanctuary for the individual psyche, a necessary defense in a turbulent world. But what if the sacred circle could be cast not just for defense or solitary work, but to create a shared reality for an entire community? This question found a vibrant, earth-centered answer in the mid-20th century with the birth of modern Wicca. Its founder, Gerald Gardner, took the ancient concept of the Astral Temple and gave it a new, democratic, and powerfully seasonal form: the ritual circle, a world between the worlds. In Gardnerian Wicca, the coven does not meet in a permanent stone temple. They create their sacred space anew each time they gather. The ritual begins with the casting of the circle. The high priestess or priest takes up the athame, the ritual knife that symbolizes will, and walks the circle's perimeter. With each step, they visualize a line of blue or silver flame rising from the blade, cutting a sacred precinct out of ordinary space. This is not just a line on the ground, it is an act of psychic architecture, identical in intent to the ancient Greek Temenos, or the magician's banishing ritual. They are defining a boundary, saying, here, within this ring, is not the living room or the forest clearing. Here is a separate reality, but the Wiccan circle is more than a barrier. It is then consecrated or called with the presence of the four classical elements at the four cardinal points: air in the east, fire in the south, water in the west, earth in the north. With each invocation, a candle is lit, incense, smoke curls, a chalice is raised, or salt is sprinkled. This process builds the walls of the temple not from stone, but from the very fabric of nature itself. By the time the circle is complete, the participants stand within a microcosm, a perfect model of the ordered universe. They have built, through collective will and symbolism, a temporary astral temple. Gardner called this space the world between the worlds, a realm that is neither fully the mundane nor fully the divine, but a purified, potentized interface where the two can meet. This temporary temple has two primary functions, both deeply connected to the coven's purpose. First, it is a perfect container for energy. As the coven chants, dances, or raises power through their shared focus, that energy swirls within the circle's boundaries, building in intensity like water filling a vessel. They often visualize this as a cone of power, a vortex of energy rising from the circle's circumference to a peak above the center, where it is then directed toward a healing intention or a magical goal. The circle's walls hold this power, preventing it from dissipating chaotically, concentrating it until the moment of release. The astral temple becomes a psychic battery charged by collective emotion and will. Second, and more profoundly, the circle is a gateway. From within this consecrated space, the coven calls upon the goddess and the god, the divine forces of nature, fertility, and the cycle of life and death. Because the circle is a world between, it becomes a place where these vast, impersonal forces can be perceived and related to in a personal way. The deities are invited into the circle, into the shared mental and emotional space of the practitioners. The ritual becomes a drama where the sacred marriage of goddess and god is enacted, where the turning wheel of the year is celebrated. The astral temple is no longer just a workshop or a fortress. It is a stage for the myths of nature, and every participant is both audience and actor. This marks a significant evolution from the traditions we have explored. The Egyptian tomb was a permanent house for one Ka. The Hermeticists' temple was a private laboratory. The Golden Dawn adept built elaborate, solitary temples keyed to universal symbols. Gardnerian Wicca made the astral temple accessible, communal, and cyclical. You did not need years of complex memorization or solitary discipline to begin. You needed a group, a simple set of tools, and a willingness to participate in the imaginative act of casting the circle together. The temple was not built to last forever in the mind's eye. It was raised for the duration of the ritual and then gracefully dissolved, its energy returned to the earth. Its purpose was tied directly to the moon's phases and the sun's journey through the seasons, to fertility, harvest, death, and rebirth. Wicca grounded the astral temple in the physical body, the natural world, and the human community. It said the sacred space could be anywhere people gathered with intent, and that its primary magic was to reconnect us with the cycles we had forgotten. The circle cast upon the ground was a mirror of the circle cast in the mind, and both were reflections of the turning wheel of the stars. This beautiful synthesis brought mental magic out of the shadowy lodge and into the moonlit grove, suggesting that the most powerful temple might be the one we build together again and again for the simple, profound purpose of remembering our place in a living world. Yet, even as this earthy practice took root, a parallel revolution was occurring in the most unlikely of places, the scientific clinic. The circle cast under the moon was a powerful act of collective imagination, but it required a group, a time, a place. What if you could access that sanctuary alone with nothing but a cassette tape and a quiet afternoon? The final, sweeping wave of popularization for the astral temple arrived not from secret societies, but from bookstore shelves and public workshops, carried on the tide of the New Age movement. Beginning in the 1970s, the once arcane techniques of mental magic were translated into a new language, the language of self-help. The complex rituals of the Golden Dawn were simplified. The fierce discipline of Thelema was softened. The goal shifted from cosmic knowledge or angelic conversation to something immediately relatable: personal peace, healing, and intuitive growth. The Astral Temple was rebranded as your safe place, your inner sanctuary, a prefabricated retreat you could visit in 20 minutes with the help of a soothing voice on a guided meditation tape. This was the ultimate democratization. You no longer needed to study Kabbalah for years to build a temple. You could close your eyes, listen, and be led down a forest path to a tranquil cottage by a stream. This visualized space served a clear, modern purpose: stress relief. In a world growing faster and more fragmented, the inner sanctuary became a psychological tool, a mental reset button to lower blood pressure and quiet anxiety. The act of mentally constructing a detailed, peaceful environment, feeling the sun on your skin, hearing the water, smelling the pine, was shown to trigger the body's relaxation response, a bridge between imaginative visualization and measurable physiological change. This practical application opened the door for its use in holistic healing. The temple became a clinic of the mind. In modalities like guided imagery for health, patients are taught to visualize a healing temple. Within this space, they might meet an inner physician, a wise, compassionate figure representing the body's own innate wisdom. They describe their symptoms to this inner guide, who then performs a symbolic healing, perhaps using instruments of light or drawing out darkness with their hands. Others visualize the afflicted area of their own body, bathing it in a specific colored light, soothing blue for inflammation, regenerative green for tissue, cleansing gold for vitality. The temple here is not for summoning planetary angels, but for focusing the mind's immense influence over the body's healing processes. It provides a structured, calm theater in which the patient can actively participate in their own wellness, transforming fear into a sense of agency. Perhaps the most significant New Age adaptation was the concept of the inner guide. The formidable holy guardian angel of Thelema was recast as a more accessible spirit guide, or higher self. The elaborate invocations were replaced with quiet, receptive meditation. In your inner sanctuary, you would simply visualize a bench or a meeting room and then invite your guide to appear. The form they took was often less important than the feeling of wisdom, love, or support they conveyed. This practice stripped away the ceremonial magic, the divine names, the complex symbolism, and focused on the core experience, a dialogue with a deeper aspect of one's own consciousness. It was intuition training. By regularly consulting this inner compass in a consecrated mental space, individuals learn to trust their own insights and navigate life's decisions with more confidence. The New Age movement, for all its occasional vagueness, achieved something monumental. It took the Astral Temple out of the occult underground and placed its core utility into the hands of millions. It said that you did not need to be a magician to benefit from a disciplined imagination. The sanctuary was not just for spiritual ascent, but for emotional balance, physical healing, and everyday wisdom. It made the inner world a legitimate, even essential, resource for navigating the outer one. Yet, in making the temple so personal, so therapeutic, and so stripped of its historical context, a question lingered. Had something of its ancient power and mystery been lost in translation or simply made available in a new, vital form? But a personal sanctuary for healing is still a fixed structure, a home you return to. What if you believed your temple should be disposable, built for a single, explosive purpose, and then torn down? This is the domain of chaos magic, a postmodern rebellion that emerged in the 1980s. It looked at the grand, ornate systems of the past, the Kabbalistic temples, the Wiccan circles, the angelic hierarchies, and asked a radically simple question: does it work? For the chaos magician, belief is not a truth to be discovered, but a tool to be picked up, used, and discarded. The Astral Temple, in this view, is the ultimate belief structure. It is not a reflection of eternal cosmic law. It is a complex, multi-room sigil, a symbolic machine designed to achieve a specific result in the subjective reality of the magician. A sigil is a symbol charged with intent, often created by distorting letters from a statement of desire. The chaos magician takes that principle and scales it up into an entire architecture. Your temple is no longer a permanent embassy to the divine. It is a pop-up shop for miracles, open for business only as long as the project requires. The aesthetic is entirely up to you, limited only by what fires your imagination and bypasses your skepticism. Where a Golden Dawn adept might build a temple of Tifereth with golden walls and solar symbols, a chaos magician might construct the Death Star's throne room if that image resonates with a feeling of absolute authority. They might design a healing temple based on the sterile, efficient sickbay of the Starship Enterprise, or a temple of insight modeled after a serene level from their favorite video game, complete with symbolic power-ups and hidden doors. The paradigm doesn't matter, the emotional and symbolic punch does. The purpose is to create a mental space that feels potent and real to you, free from the baggage of historical tradition if that baggage holds you back. The process follows a clear, pragmatic cycle. First, you define your intent with surgical precision. Not, I want to be successful, but I need the inspired idea to complete this project by Friday. Then you design a temple that symbolically encapsulates that goal. If the intent is persuasive communication, you might build a temple shaped like a vast amphitheater with acoustics that make every word ring true. You furnish it with images of great orators or a whispering gallery that clarifies thought. You pour detail into this construct until it feels tangible. Next comes the crucial phase, charging it through gnosis. Gnosis is the chaos magic term for an altered state of consciousness, a peak of focused emotion or avoided thought that acts as the ignition switch. This could be achieved through frenetic dancing until exhaustion, intense meditation to still the mind completely, sensory deprivation, or even profound arousal or anger, any state that breaks the normal chatter of the ego and allows the symbolic intent to be launched directly into the subconscious. In this heightened state, you fully inhabit your temporary temple. You perform your symbolic ritual within it. You feel the result as already accomplished. You charge the entire structure with the raw voltage of your Gnostic state. And then you let it go. You consciously dissolve the temple. You might visualize it crumbling to dust or fading like a dream upon waking. This dissolution is not an afterthought. It is a core tenet. Attachment to the tool, belief in the temple as a permanent thing, is seen as a trap. It creates dogma. By destroying the temple after use, you prevent the belief from hardening into a limiting identity. You remain fluid, adaptable, ready to build an entirely new paradigm for the next working. The temple exists in a beautiful, fleeting state of pure potential built from will, charged in ecstasy, and released into the universe to do its work. Chaos magic represents the ultimate flexibility of the Astral Temple concept. It severs the last cords to external authority, making the individual's imagination and focused intent the sole architects of reality. The temple becomes a psychological weapon of precise, personal change, but this very freedom raises a final, haunting question for our journey. If the temple is entirely subjective, a construct that can be anything at all, then what, if anything, is actually real about the space where all this building occurs? Chaos magic declares the temple a disposable tool, a belief to be used and discarded. But what if the space where you build it is the most enduring part of you? The 20th century produced a map for that inner territory, drawn not by a magician, but by a doctor. Carl Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, spent his career exploring the vast, uncharted continent of the unconscious. And in his work, we find the Astral Temple not as an esoteric technique, but as a fundamental, natural function of the human psyche, essential for wholeness. He called the practice active imagination. This is not passive daydreaming. It is a deliberate, conscious dialogue with the contents of your own unconscious. The process begins by quieting the conscious mind, then observing whatever images, figures, or stories spontaneously arise from within. The key is to then engage with them. You do not just watch the inner movie, you step onto the screen and speak to the characters. You might find yourself in a dark forest, at the edge of a deep well, or standing before a mysterious building. This landscape is your astral temple in its raw, organic form, a psychic space generated by the unconscious itself as a meeting ground. Jung gave a specific name to the protective boundary needed for this risky, profound work. He revived the ancient Greek word, Temenos. For Jung, the Temenos was the sacred precinct, the magic circle, the consulting room. It was the psychological container that makes dangerous inner work safe. To enter active imagination without the sense of a sacred, bounded space was, he warned, like performing surgery in a dusty street. The Temenos provides the necessary safety for the ego to encounter the powerful, often unsettling, archetypal forces of the collective unconscious without being overwhelmed. Within this protective circle, the goal is not to summon angels or cast spells, but to achieve what Jung termed individuation, the lifelong process of integrating the unconscious with the conscious, becoming the unique, complete person you are meant to be. And the ultimate symbol of this achieved wholeness, this integrated self, is the mandala. Mandala is a Sanskrit word meaning circle, and across cultures it appears as a complex, symmetrical design centered around a point. Jung observed that his patients, when progressing toward psychological balance, would spontaneously draw or dream of such images. For him, the mandala was the blueprint of the self. It represented the natural ordering principle of the psyche, the innate drive toward unity and centeredness. Your astral temple, in its most perfected form, is a three-dimensional, walkable mandala. Its symmetrical layout, its central altar or focus, its defined boundaries, all of these are architectural expressions of that same integrative impulse. The temple is the psyche building a home for its own completeness. So, from a Jungian perspective, what exactly happens when you construct and visit your astral temple? You are creating a Temenos, a sacred container within your own mind. You then consciously step into that container to engage in active imagination. The figures you meet there, the wise guide, the shadowy challenger, the animal companion, are not spirits from another plane, but personified aspects of your own unconscious, archetypes. These are universal patterns of human experience, like the hero, the mother, the trickster, or the wise old man. Your temple becomes the neutral ground where your conscious ego can meet these powerful inner forces, not as overwhelming threats, but as potential sources of wisdom, energy, and balance. This is not merely a therapeutic metaphor, it is a validation of the mechanism behind centuries of esoteric practice. When the Renaissance magician assumed a god form of Mercury, he was consciously identifying with the archetype of the communicator, the trickster, the guide. He was using a symbolic, ritualized form of active imagination to integrate those qualities. When the shaman journeys to meet a spirit animal, he is dialoguing with an archetypal expression of instinct and wisdom. The astral temple provides the stable, sacred setting for this dialogue to occur safely and productively. It is a framework for integration and healing. This psychological lens does not diminish the magic. It grounds it in the innate architecture of the human mind. It suggests that building an inner sanctuary is not an escape from reality, but a deeper engagement with the reality of the self. The temple is where you go to have a serious conversation with everything you are and everything you could be. The work done there literally rewires your perception, helping to assimilate fragmented parts of your psyche into a more coherent whole. So, whether you approach it as magic or as psychology, the outcome points in the same direction: greater self-knowledge, balance, and a sense of authentic purpose. The walls of your temple, therefore, are not just defenses against external chaos, but the structuring boundaries that allow internal chaos to become cosmos ordered, beautiful, and whole. Jung's mandala points toward an innate architecture of the self, a psychological need for inner order. But where exactly in the flesh and blood of our being does this architecture get drawn? The answer lies in the most miraculous material we possess, the living, changing tissue of the brain itself. For centuries, mystics spoke of reshaping the soul. Modern neuroscience now reveals they were also, quite literally, reshaping their brains. This brings us to a foundational discovery of the last few decades: neuroplasticity. This is the brain's stunning ability to reorganize itself throughout life by forming new neural connections. It means your brain is not a fixed, hardwired machine. It is more like a vast, dynamic garden. The paths you walk most frequently become well-trodden, clear, and easy to travel. The paths you ignore become overgrown and faint. Every thought, every repeated action, every learned skill is a choice of which neural pathway to take, and each time you take it, you make it a little stronger, a little more permanent. This is not a metaphor, it is a physical process. When you learn to play a piano chord, specific neurons in your motor and auditory cortex fire together. With practice, the connection between those neurons strengthens, a process called synaptic potentiation. The brain literally rewires itself to make playing that chord effortless. Now apply this principle to the disciplined practice of building and visiting your astral temple. When you close your eyes and vividly visualize walking across that checkered marble floor, feeling its cool solidity, you are not just daydreaming. You are activating the visual cortex, the somatosensory cortex for touch, and the spatial navigation networks in the hippocampus. you are giving your brain a specific, intricate task. Each time you return to this mental sanctuary, adding detail, the scent of sandalwood, the sound of a distant bell, you are firing that same complex pattern of neurons again. And just like the pianist practicing scales, that repeated firing strengthens the connections, the neural pathway for that specific inner experience becomes more robust, more efficient, more readily accessible. What begins as a strenuous act of concentration gradually becomes a familiar, effortless inner landscape. You have physically carved a new road in your own mind. Scientific studies on meditation, a close cousin to focused visualization, provide compelling evidence for this transformation. Long-term meditators show measurable increases in gray matter density in brain regions linked to attention, such as the prefrontal cortex. They also show growth in the insula, associated with interoception, the awareness of your own internal bodily state, and in the hippocampus, vital for memory and emotional regulation. Simultaneously, research often shows a decrease in the size of the amygdala, the brain's fear and stress alarm center. This is a physical blueprint for calm and clarity. The disciplined, repeated focus of meditation, much like the repeated, detailed focus of constructing your inner temple, appears to literally build up the brain structures for sustained attention and self-awareness while pruning back the reactivity of the stress response. So, the Astral Temple practice moves from the realm of esoteric philosophy into the domain of cognitive exercise. It is a targeted workout for specific mental muscles. By consistently directing your imagination to build stability, beauty, and order within a defined space, you are strengthening the neural circuits for focused attention. You are enhancing your capacity for vivid mental imagery, which is the bedrock of creativity and problem solving. And by using this space for emotional regulation, perhaps by visualizing a chaotic feeling being transformed into light on your altar, you are training the brain's emotional centers to respond with flexibility rather than raw reaction. You are building what neuroscientists might call top-down regulation, where the conscious, planning parts of your brain learn to calm the deeper, emotional parts. This reframes the entire practice. The Astral Temple is not an escape from reality. It is a sophisticated training ground for the instrument that perceives reality, your own nervous system. When you cultivate inner peace within that sanctuary, you are not just imagining a feeling. You are laying down the neural tracks that make genuine, resilient peace more accessible in the chaos of daily life. The temple's walls, then, are built not of thought alone, but of strengthened synapses. Its enduring light is the glow of a brain that has learned, through repetition, how to find its own calm center. This scientific perspective invites a profound question. If we can sculpt our own neural pathways with such intentionality, what other ancient practices might be waiting, not for mystical validation, but for us to simply understand the mechanics of their power? The brain's ability to sculpt its own pathways reveals a profound truth. We are all natural architects of inner space. This timeless urge to build within the mind hasn't stayed locked in ancient texts or secret lodges. It has burst into our collective imagination, reframed in the stories we watch and the games we play. Consider the most famous magical school in modern fiction. At Hogwarts, hidden behind a tapestry on the 7th floor, lies the room of requirement. It appears only when a person is in desperate need, and it transforms itself perfectly to meet that need. For Dumbledore's army, it becomes a training hall complete with practice dummies and defensive spellbooks. For a house elf seeking refuge, it becomes a cozy kitchen. This is the Astral Temple as a pop culture icon, a customizable, on-demand sanctuary that materializes from pure intent. It is not a fixed location, but a responsive creation shaped by the will and emotional state of the person who seeks it. The room teaches a core magical principle that the space you need is conjured not by complex wand work alone, but by the clarity and intensity of your desire. This theme of programmable reality finds its ultimate expression in the digital dreamscape of the Matrix. Here, characters enter the construct, a blank white space that can be loaded with any environment, any set of rules. It is a pure visualization chamber, In this void, they download skills directly into their minds, becoming instant masters of kung fu or helicopter piloting. They meet in personalized virtual rooms, like the serene mountainside where the oracle waits, or the elegant restaurant where deals are made over digital wine. These are not just cool special effects, they are literal depictions of mental magic's promise. The construct is a shared astral plane, a consensus reality where the only limits are the parameters of the code, or in our terms, the strength and focus of the collective imagination. It presents a world where the inner temple is not a metaphor, but the primary interface for all interaction, learning, and power. Christopher Nolan's Inception takes this a step further, exploring the architecture of dreams as a collaborative heist. The dreamscape is a layered, nested reality built by a team of architects. They design entire worlds, a rainy city, a mountaintop fortress, a limbo of crumbling memories, and then inhabit them with such detail that they become indistinguishable from reality. This is the Astral Temple as a heist tool, a meticulously planned psychic environment constructed for a specific, high-stakes purpose. The film's rules mirror esoteric warnings: go too deep, lose your anchor, and you risk being trapped in the labyrinth of your own subconscious, a place where decades can pass in a single night. It dramatizes both the incredible power and the profound danger of building too convincingly within the mind without a secure tether back to waking consciousness. Even our favorite detectives have adopted the technique. In modern portrayals, Sherlock Holmes retreats into his mind palace. When faced with a puzzle, he closes his eyes and walks the halls of a vast mental mansion. In each room, he stores memories, facts, and clues, organized with flawless precision. He does not just recall information, he navigates to it, interacts with it, and finds connections in the spatial relationships between ideas. This is a direct descendant of the Renaissance memory palaces of Giordano Bruno, repackaged as a sign of genius. It shows us that the Astral Temple is not solely for spiritual seekers. It is a practical tool for intellectual mastery, a way to structure the chaos of information into a navigable, inner world of knowledge. These blockbuster examples do more than entertain. They prove that the concept of a malleable inner reality resonates on a deep, almost instinctual level. We are captivated by stories where the mind's landscape becomes the primary setting for adventure, conflict, and transformation. This widespread appeal demystifies the ancient practice. It suggests that building an astral temple is not an obscure, esoteric act, but an extension of a very human capacity we all recognize and admire in our heroes. When we watch Neo download jiu-jitsu, or Hermione Granger summon a practice room, or Sherlock Holmes pace his mental corridors, we are not just being told a story. We are being given a modern myth for the power of the disciplined imagination. They remind us that the most important spaces we will ever explore or build are not made of brick or binary code, but of thought, memory, and will. And if these fictional worlds can feel so real and consequential to us as an audience, what might we build in the private theater of our own minds with a fraction of that focused intent? The power to build begins with a single, quiet breath. Find a space where you will not be interrupted, even if just for 10 minutes. Sit comfortably or lie down if you prefer, and let your body settle. Take 3 slow, deep breaths, feeling the tension drain from your shoulders, your jaw, your hands with each exhalation. There is no rush. This is not about forcing an image, but about allowing a space to open. When you feel a sense of calm, picture a door. It can be any door at all, a simple wooden one, an ornate carved gateway, even a hatch or a curtain. Do not strain to see it perfectly. Just know it is there, standing in the darkness behind your closed eyes. This door is your threshold. In your mind, reach out and turn the handle. Feel the cool metal or the smooth wood. Gently push it open and step through. You find yourself in a room. For now, it is empty. It is simply a space defined by walls, a floor, and a ceiling. It is quiet, and it is yours. Let your awareness fill this space. Feel its dimensions. Is it small and cozy, or spacious and airy? Notice the quality of the light, perhaps a soft, diffuse glow with no visible source, just enough to see by. This is your foundation, your blank canvas. Now, begin to make it a home for your attention. Visualize a place to sit or rest in the center of the room. It might be a simple cushion, a comfortable armchair, or a smooth stone bench. Imagine settling into it, feeling its support. This is your anchor within the sanctuary. Next, bring in a source of light, a single candle on a small stand, its flame steady and calm, or a lamp with a warm, golden shade. Watch the light it casts, how it pushes back the shadows just enough to create a circle of gentle illumination around you. On one wall, you might place a single, simple symbol, not a complex magical seal, but an image that means peace to you, a smooth stone, a simple circle. A leaf, a word written in light. This is not for worship, but for focus, a gentle point for your gaze to return to when your mind wanders. Now, engage your other senses. What does the air smell like here? Clean, like after a rain, or faintly sweet, like sandalwood? Is there a sound, perhaps a distant, soothing hum, or perfect silence, so deep you can hear your own heartbeat? The goal is not architectural grandeur, but sensory reality. The more senses you involve, the more solid this sanctuary becomes. The most important step is the easiest to forget. You must return. Do not worry if your first visit feels vague, or if your mind drifts to your grocery list. That is completely normal. The magic is in the repetition. Commit to visiting this same simple room for just a few minutes each day. Each visit, you might add one tiny detail, a rug on the floor, a window looking out on a peaceful sky, the feeling of a soft blanket across your lap. With each return, you are not just daydreaming. You are performing a profound act of neural knitting. You are strengthening the astral muscles of your imagination, teaching your brain that this inner address is real, safe, and always available. This bare room is your training ground. Before you can fill a temple with powerful symbols, you must first master the art of holding a single, quiet space in your mind and calling it your own. Your basic sanctuary is a refuge, a quiet room in the mind, but a refuge can become a workshop, a library, a throne room. Once the simple space feels stable and familiar, you can begin to furnish it with purpose, turning a quiet chamber into a dynamic instrument for your growth. This is the art of advanced embellishment, where every object you visualize becomes a dialogue with your own deeper intentions. Start with symbols, but choose them not from a generic list, but from the private language of your soul. What does growth feel like to you? Perhaps it is the stubborn green shoot of a plant pushing through dark soil. Place a pot with such a plant on a shelf, and when you visit, take a moment to tend to it, to visualize its roots deepening and new leaves unfurling. This simple act reinforces your commitment to your own expansion. Is your goal clarity? A sphere of perfectly clear quartz, cool and heavy in your hand, can become a focal point. Holding it in your imagination, you might imagine it gathering mental fog and dissolving it into light. Need to cut through confusion or procrastination. A sword resting on a stand need not be a weapon of war. It can be a symbol of decisive discrimination, its sharp edge representing the clear choice that severs tangled threads of doubt. The power is not in the symbol itself, but in the conscious, repeated association you build between that image and the inner quality you wish to cultivate. Your temple becomes a gallery of your aspirations, each object a meditation in solid form. Consider adding a new wing to your inner sanctuary, a library. This is not a room of dusty, silent tomes. It is the living archive of your experience. Visualize a space filled with light, shelves that hold not books, but memories and understandings given form. One shelf might hold glowing spheres, each containing the essence of a lesson learned, the time you overcame a fear, the moment of profound insight. Another might hold symbolic objects representing skills you have mastered. A painter might see a palette alive with color, a writer, a quill that writes with light. The purpose of this library is active recollection and integration. When facing a new challenge, you can enter this annex and seek the sphere of a past success, drawing its confidence back into your present moment. It transforms passive memory into an accessible resource, teaching your psyche that no lesson is ever truly lost. This leads to the most delicate and potent form of embellishment, populating your temple with conscious constructs. These are guardians, guides, or inner teachers that you intentionally form from imagination and will. A guardian might take the form of a silent, watchful animal at the threshold, or an armored figure radiating a sense of boundary and safety. Its role is not to fight, but to embody the principle of protection you have established, making that feeling more tangible and immediate. An inner guide could be a figure of wisdom, perhaps an elder, a luminous being, or even an abstract shape that conveys intelligence. The benefit is profound. These constructs provide a focal point for dialogue with your own intuition. You can pose questions to your guide and listen for answers that arise from your deeper knowing, a practice that trains you to distinguish true insight from mere mental chatter. Yet here, a note of caution is essential. These beings are thought forms, extensions of your own psyche. It is vital to remember their origin. They are servants of your higher purpose, not independent deities or spirits. The moment you begin to believe they have power over you, or that you are dependent on their external approval, you have crossed from a useful psychological tool into a potential trap of superstition. The health of this practice rests on maintaining a conscious authorship. You created them, you can respectfully alter or dissolve them if they no longer serve. Their power is borrowed from your own awareness, and that awareness must remain the true sovereign of the temple. Ultimately, the most potent elements you will ever place in your inner world are those that vibrate with your unique frequency. A symbol from an ancient text has no inherent power if it feels empty to you, but a worn seashell from a childhood beach, a particular shade of blue from a favorite painting, or a fragment of melody that always stirs your heart, these are the true relics of your spirit. Your temple's architecture should follow the contours of your own journey, not a prescribed map. Does your soul crave a tower for perspective or a deep pool for reflection? Does it need a forge for transforming difficult experiences or a garden for nurturing new beginnings? Trust that the symbols and forms that rise from your own intuition, the ones that feel charged with personal meaning, are the correct ones. They are the native language of your inner world, and learning to speak it fluently is the real magic. This personalized sanctuary becomes a mirror, not of who you are, but of who you are choosing to become, one imagined stone, one symbolic guardian at a time. That door you just built is a promise of safety, but the first time you step through it, you might not feel safe at all. You might feel silly. A quiet voice whispers, "This is just a daydream. You're just making this up." This is the first and most common obstacle, doubt. It is a natural reflex of a mind trained in a material world, but here is a crucial reframe. Imagination is not the opposite of perception, it is a faculty of perception. When an architect draws a blueprint, she is imagining a building that does not yet exist. That act of imagination is the first, essential step in making it real. Your astral temple is a blueprint for a state of being. The act of constructing it is not fabrication, but focused perception turned inward. You are perceiving a possibility, and by repeatedly visiting it, you are making that possibility more tangible to your own nervous system. The feeling of reality follows the act of attention, not the other way around. So when doubt arises, acknowledge it politely, and then return to the sensory detail of your sanctuary. The proof is not in believing without question, but in the consistent practice itself. Your next visitor will be distraction. You are focusing on your inner candle flame, and suddenly you are mentally rehearsing a conversation from work or wondering what to make for dinner. Your mind has wandered. This is not failure, it is the default setting of the human brain. The practice is in the gentle return. Do not scold yourself. Simply notice, "Oh, I am thinking about tomorrow's meeting," and without any drama, guide your attention back to a single anchor. Feel the imagined texture of your seat. Listen again for the quiet hum in your temple. Watch the candle flame dance, steady and unwavering. Each time you catch the wander and return, you are not failing at meditation, you are succeeding at the most important part. You are strengthening the muscle of intentional focus. Think of it as training a puppy. You do not get angry when it runs off. You patiently, consistently bring it back to the spot. Over time, it learns to stay. Then there is the third, more serious challenge, fear. In the quiet dark of your own mind, sometimes something unsettling appears. A shadow in the corner that was not there before, a sudden feeling of dread, a figure that seems menacing. This can be startling, even terrifying, and it makes many people abandon the practice entirely. But this moment is not a sign you are doing it wrong. It is a critical test of your sovereignty. Your temple must have an inviolable rule: you are always in control. Before you even begin regular practice, establish a foolproof exit strategy. That simple door you first visualized, it must always work. Decide now that in your imagination, touching that door handle will instantly and gently return you to full waking awareness in your physical room. Practice this exit a few times when you are feeling calm. Build the neural pathway so it is automatic. If you encounter a fearful image, do not engage with it. Do not argue with it or try to fight it. Engaging gives it energy and blurs the line between your will and the psychic noise. Instead, use your pre-learned tools of cleansing. This is where a technique like visualizing bright, purifying light becomes essential. Imagine a sunburst erupting from the center of your temple, from your own heart, flooding every corner with uncompromising white gold light. It is not an attack, it is a statement. It declares the nature of your space. You can combine this with a simple, firm command spoken in your mind, like clear or peace. This act reasserts your authority. It reminds you that every stone, every beam of light in this sanctuary was placed by you. Fear often arises from a sense of powerlessness. By actively cleansing the space, you reclaim your power. You demonstrate to your own psyche that this is a safe, sovereign territory, and you are its benevolent ruler. The temple's walls are only as strong as your conviction that you built them and that you can always walk out the door. But a tool of such power demands a code of honor. The ability to shape reality within your mind carries with it a profound responsibility, not just to yourself, but to the world your inner work touches. The first and most critical rule, echoed across every genuine esoteric tradition from Wicca to ceremonial magic, is this: you do not use your inner temple to manipulate the free will of another. This is the line that separates a practice of empowerment from one of spiritual theft. To visualize a specific person, to build a scenario in your astral space where they act according to your desires, to send energy intended to bend their choices, this is not magic. It is a violation. It treats another conscious being as a puppet in the theater of your own wants, and it violates the core ethical principle of consent. Most traditions view this as a serious breach that ultimately corrupts the practitioner, turning the temple from a sanctuary into a prison of their own selfishness. The energy sent out returns, often twisted, and the first casualty is always the magician's own integrity. Your inner work should be directed at refining yourself, clarifying your own intentions, and healing your own wounds, not at scripting the lives of others. A more subtle yet equally dangerous pitfall is obsession. The Astral Temple can be exquisitely beautiful, a place of perfect peace and limitless possibility. It is dangerously easy to begin preferring this crafted inner world to the messy, unpredictable, and often painful reality of everyday life. This is a form of spiritual bypassing, a retreat into the sanctuary to avoid the difficult but necessary work of living. You might spend hours in deep meditation communing with inner guides, but neglect your relationships, your health, or your duties. The temple becomes not a workshop for transformation, but an escape hatch from growth. The true purpose of any spiritual practice is not to leave the world behind, but to learn how to bring more wisdom, compassion, and presence into it. If your inner work does not make you a more engaged, responsible, and loving person in your outer life, it has become a dead-end fantasy. This is why grounding is not an optional extra, it is an essential part of the ritual. After any deep session of visualization or inner journeying, you must consciously return, feel the weight of your body in the chair, stomp your feet gently on the floor. Go outside and put your bare hands in the soil, or simply hold a cool glass of water and drink it slowly, feeling the liquid travel down your throat. Eat a piece of dense, whole grain bread. These simple, physical acts tether the expanded awareness back to the present moment and the physical vessel. They prevent you from becoming unmoored, spacey, or dissociated. Grounding integrates the high-voltage insights from the temple into the circuitry of your daily existence. It says the journey is complete for now, and the work here in the world of action begins. Ultimately, the health of your practice is measured by its fruits in the open air. The Astral Temple is a tool for growth and for service. Its highest function is to forge you into a clearer instrument, to burn away ego, not inflate it. Any feeling of specialness, of being more spiritually advanced than others because you have a secret inner castle, is a warning sign. The temple's light should illuminate your own shadows, not cast a longer shadow of pride. The insights you gain, the peace you cultivate, the strength you build within those walls are meant to be shared, not hoarded. Did a vision in your temple offer you forgiveness? Then practice forgiveness with a real person who wronged you. Did you find a sense of boundless compassion in your inner sanctum? Let it soften your voice in a difficult conversation. The temple is the rehearsal room, life is the stage. The magic is not complete until the wisdom gathered in solitude is woven into the fabric of your relationships, your work, and your simple presence on this earth. A sanctuary that does not send you back out into the world with greater courage and kindness is merely a very beautiful cage. A blueprint is fixed, but a home breathes. The most profound truth about your astral temple is that it was never meant to be a static monument. As you change, it will change with you. One day, during your meditation, you might turn a familiar corner and find a door where a blank wall once stood. You open it and there is a new room, perhaps a sunlit conservatory filled with unfamiliar plants, or a small, windowless chamber containing a single, puzzling object. This is not a mistake in your design, it is a message. The temple is not a dollhouse you furnish and then admire. It is a living entity in dialogue with the deepest currents of your being. Your conscious mind built the foundation in the first few rooms, setting the stage, but now the unconscious, the deeper self, has begun to contribute to the architecture. A new room appearing often signifies a new capacity, a latent talent, or an aspect of your psyche that is now ready to be integrated and explored. That mysterious object on the pedestal is not random. It is a symbol waiting for your conscious attention to decode it, to ask what it represents in your life right now. The entire structure can evolve. The simple cottage might, over years, become a sprawling complex with towers, libraries, healing springs, and gates to other landscapes. Conversely, a grand castle might simplify into a humble hermitage, signaling a shift from seeking external power to valuing inner quiet. This evolution is the dialogue. You consciously tend the space, and in return, the space reveals the contours of your soul's journey. The symbols you placed with intention might slowly change their meaning. A sword you visualized for courage might, over time, feel less like a weapon and more like a tool for precise discernment. The guardian at the gate might soften its stance, indicating you have internalized the lesson of protection and no longer need such a stern, externalized form. This is how the temple becomes a living map. Its halls are the pathways of your attention. Its shifting rooms chart the territory of your growth. A blocked corridor might mirror a current life obstacle. A newly revealed pool of clear water could reflect a recent emotional cleansing or a wellspring of intuition you have just tapped. To engage with this living map requires an attitude of partnership. You are not just the architect, you are also the explorer, the student of your own inner world. Approach changes with curiosity, not control. When you find a new door, do not force it open before you feel ready. Sit with it. Ask inwardly what it might hold. When a symbol's meaning seems to shift, journal about it. What in your life feels more discerning now, rather than merely brave? This ongoing conversation turns spiritual practice from a solitary monologue into a dynamic relationship with your own totality. It teaches you that you are not building a sanctuary to escape the self, but to meet the self in all its unfolding complexity. The temple's final form, then, is not a destination. It is the ever-changing signature of your becoming, written in the language of image and space, a testament to the fact that the most sacred thing you can build is a willingness to listen to what you are becoming. This entire journey, from the shaman's drum to the chaos magician's disposable sigil, traces a single, unbroken human impulse. We have always sought a room of our own within the vast mansion of consciousness. Whether called a Temenos, a memory palace, a ritual circle, or a safe space, the Astral Temple is that room. It is the legacy of mental magic, proof that our most powerful tool for transformation is the disciplined, sacred use of our own imagination. This practice does not belong to any one creed or century. It is a universal technology of the spirit, equally at home in a psychologist's office, a Wiccan coven, or the silent meditation of a solitary seeker. Its walls can be built upon the stones of any tradition or from the unique symbols of your personal journey. The architecture adapts, but the purpose remains: to create an inner sanctuary where healing can occur, wisdom can be heard, and the raw material of the self can be deliberately shaped. This is your inheritance. The blueprints are scattered across history, waiting for you to assemble them into a design that fits the contours of your own soul. So begin the experiment. Start with a door, build a simple room, visit it for just a few minutes each day, and observe what happens. Let the architecture evolve as you do. This is not an escape from reality, but a deeper engagement with the reality that you are. And if you feel moved, share your discoveries below. Tell us about the first symbol you placed on your inner altar, or the unexpected door that appeared in your sanctuary. Your journey adds another chapter to this ancient, ongoing story of the human spirit building a home for itself. For in the end, the greatest temple you will ever explore, and the most miraculous one you will ever build, is the universe that already